Visszaszámlálásból is indul a promó, srácok, és utána jöttek Tigabika.
Nulla mehet.
Jó, az övé.
52 másodpercről.
És akkor
Szabadon, de úgy koncentráljuk az elejére.
A warm welcome to everyone joining us from all over the world. We're here at the marvelous Red Bull Ring for the opening race of the season for GT Cup Series. But first, it's the endurance race, 1 hour full of emotions, overtakes, and much, much more. There are plenty of cars ready here. More than 30 entries this year for a revamped championship that sees so many different categories. Of course, GT3 and GT4 racing being the main show here. But not only that, we have GTX. Of course, those cars that are not allowed to be in GT3s anymore or with different rules and regulations. We have GT Cup cars as well here on the grid, as well as prototypes. And right behind me, we have Paul Sitter. Of course, we have Rupert Atzberger for KTM Crossbow. Of course, the GTX car being faster than everyone, so quick down the straights, but so competitive throughout the entire lap. Here at the Red Bull Ring, not just KTM though, we have a BMW 2-3 here on the grid. We have Antal Gigo in second position and Rudolf Benio in third place. The two BMW cars being mighty quick here at the Red Bull Ring. GT3s being, of course, very, very quick, as we saw for fourth place, where we see the Lamborghini of Gerhard Tveraser. Of course, we have 60 minutes of racing today for the maiden race in the endurance category for this year's GT Cup Series. Stay with us to see what happens as we are ready to get underway here from the Red Bull Ring.
Elvettem, köszönöm.
Elvettünk titeket, köszönjük szépen, Gáborom, szuperek voltatok, pusson
Köszi,
vissza.
Gabika, ha tudsz még maradhatsz, vagy ha bent tudsz maradni, maradj.
A fura félszerzet meg
Szólhathatlak. Akkor tiéd, Lavika.
Here we are with the images live from the Red Bull Ring. Cars now going through the formation lap before the 60 minutes of racing here for the endurance race of GT Cup Series. Championship that has been completely rebranded after last year. Of course, having 2 sprint races and 1 endurance race per weekend. And here we are for the latter, ready to start at the Red Bull Ring. We saw the starting grid, we saw KTM on pole position, and we were able to figure out just how quick the GTX class really is. Rupert Atzberger starting from first place, just ahead of Antal Gigo in the BMW M4. Third place from Rudolf Beno and Gerard Tverazer in fourth position with the Lamborghini, sitting in the GTX category is the KTM Crossbow starting on pole, whereas the other 3 cars are from GT3. And here we are, you can see the KTM on the right-hand side of the track and the left-hand side of the screen. And then all the other entries ready to take on this absolutely incredible race, ready to unfold right in front of our eyes, with Atzberger on pole position, getting ready to take the start from pole. His BMW rivals of Gigo and Benyo in second and third place. Gigo on the right hand side, Benyo on the left of the screen. And here we are, lights out and away we go. It's a brilliant start by one of the other BMW cars that is now up into second position. Some of them going slightly wide. Rupert Atzberger keeping his first place. Watch out for Jürgen Alsen, who was able to climb up to the top 3, as we also saw one of the Porsche Cup cars spinning in the background. As you can see now, all cars getting towards turn 3, and here we are, car number 848, unfortunately for them, finishing turn 1 the wrong way. Richard Voschitz that was, for Kogelbauer Motorsport team in the GTC1 category. But here we are with race leader Rupert Atzberger. It was a phenomenal start for the overall leader and the GTX leader in car number 814. And right behind him, it's BMW with Antal Gigo, Rudolf Benyo, but most importantly, Jürgen Alsen with a perfect start from 5th position on the grid. He was able to jump all the way up to second towards turn number 1. Now keeping that position throughout the opening lap of the race. Antal Gigo and Rudolf Benyo right behind him with Gerhard Tveraser and the HP Racing International car. The Lamborghini Huracan GT3 in 5th position. Watch out for the prototypes as well that we have seen throughout this weekend being very quick. Miro Konopka in the ARC Bratislava Ligier. Here he is crossing the start-finish line in what is 8th position, but leader of the D5 category, which is the prototype class. As here you can see a fight between the good old BMW M6 and right behind him the Lamborghini Huracan of Christian Wimberger, who's trying to go all the way around the outside towards turn 3. There's also a KTM crossbow behind them, but here you can see the M6 of Racing Trevor, Gregor Gigo behind the wheel, making the lunge up the inside, though a nice switchback from Wimberger, who's trying hard to get the place done now. As we can also see in front of them a fight between Konopka and one of the Mercedes, the one from Piotr Vira and Good Speed Racing team, in the fight for 8th place. Meanwhile, Wimberger was able to overtake Gregor Gigo for 11th so far. The two, however, being between two different categories: GTX for Wimberger, GT3 for Gregor Gigo. As now drivers go towards the start of lap number 3 with Rupert Atzberger in front. Jürgen Alsen in second position, lovely stuff for him from down in 5th. And then Rudolf Benyo in 3rd place. Antal Gigo lost 3 places and dropped down to 5th. Gerhard Tveraser in front of him, but here you can see again the fight between Gregor Gigo and Christian Wimberger in what is the fight for 10th. The Lamborghini keeping the last spot in the overall top 10 behind teammate Alexander Ober, also in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 and also in the GTX category, currently in 3rd and 4th position in class. But watch out for Gregor Gigo, who's going to try and make up a place towards turn 1. That unfortunately for him didn't work, as he was able to attack his rival, but not enough to get inside the top 10. Here we go again with Gregor Gigo looking for a place up the inside of his rival. And now you can see also the time left on the clock, 55 minutes and 51 seconds for this maiden endurance race that sees 34 cars. One of the most anticipated plans for 2025, the one for GT Cup Series. As we now can see once again Gregor Gigo looking to the inside of Christian Wimberger. maybe trying a move up the inside of turn number 9. But the M6, which is definitely the heavier of the two GT cars, well, 3 now, if we see the other Lamborghini now in the shot throughout the corners, though it's very quick down the straights, thanks to its speed. As we now see the Lamborghini having to defend the inside throughout the opening corners. Christian Wimberger in the bright orange Lamborghini. And of course, Gregor Gigo right behind him for Racing Trevor. Currently in 11th place, but most crucially 3rd in the GT3 category, behind Piotr Vira, who is 8th overall, and Rudolf Benio, who is in 3rd place in the overall standings so far. You could also see the LMP3 car of ARC Bratislava, one of the most important teams present here in the endurance race and in GT Cup Series. Miro Konopka, one of the most experienced drivers on the grid today, behind the wheel of car number 4, currently in 7th. Whereas we now see, unfortunately, one of the cars that is stopped is one of the Radicals, who seem to have lost quite a lot of time. Should be the car of Andreas Müller, car number 7, who is stuck in 34th position. And unfortunately, even Antal Gigo seems to have some issues, as his car seems to be stopped as well, with drivers that now see the panel right there of the safety car. And now graphically as well, we can see the communication that the security vehicle has been called out on track. Here it is. And so the safety car will bunch everyone up together. It is already up towards turn 3 and has already taken Rupert Atzberger behind it, the KTM crossbow driver, who was first not only in class but in the overall standings as well after 4 laps. Fortunately sees his 2.5 second gap over Jürgen Alsen being completely erased, as the safety car will bunch everyone up together. Such a shame for Antal Gigo as well. He was looking mighty quick in qualifying, securing 2nd position, but unfortunately for him, a less than ideal start, which then saw him apparently retire early. Same, however, goes for Andreas Müller, that we saw before, outside turn number 1. And unfortunately for him, his Radical stopping by the track. And here you can see all the drivers reducing their speed. And here you can see one of the prettiest cars, and definitely one of the loudest out on track. It is the Praga R1 that is driven by Roman Robicek, car number 62, currently in 19th position, part of the D5 category, the one reserved to prototypes, and it is currently holding 3rd place in class. So a good job from Robicek. Praga R1 Turbo being one of the most unique cars out there for sure, being very technical to drive and very difficult to master, especially given its low top speed but its incredibly high downforce. The contrary, however, could be said for the race leader, Rupert Atzberger, in his KTM Crossbow, the GTX car that has dominated qualifying, formerly part of the GT2 category, and now, of course, inside the GTX class, which groups all cars that do not fit into other categories together, which is always a toss-up to see who is going to end up quickest. Atzberger was the answer for qualifying and for the first 4 minutes of racing before the safety car interrupted proceedings. And here you can see the timer with exactly 51 minutes left on the clock and the safety car being deployed. There you can see on the outside of turn 3 the Radical of Andreas Müller being stuck and of course out of the race, unfortunately for him. So all 32 cars that are left so far in this race are now behind the safety car. The marshals working tirelessly to try and clear the track as soon as possible, but of course quite tough, especially on a place like turn 3 where the barriers are pretty much close to the racetrack. And here you can see the marshals working to tie the radical to the vehicle that is supposed to be taking the car out of the racetrack. So we're hopefully going to get ready for a restart in a couple of minutes or so. And here you can see the many different cars on display. We saw and talked about the Praga R1 Turbo before, but there's also a German constructor, sorry, Austrian constructor, PRC, with the PRC Audi Turbo being one of the prototypes on show today. Part of the Div 1 category, the first division of prototypes, which see so far Diego Romanini in first place with the PRC Audi Turbo, ahead of Peter Korman and Arnold Wagner, whereas fourth belongs to Ron Ruprechter and fifth did belong to Andreas Miller, but unfortunately he had to retire after an issue with his car. It hasn't been an easy start for Inigo Reich either, as the Ligier driver is in the pit lane pretty early on, and he seems to have said goodbye to his dream of a class win in the Div 2 category, which is now led by Alexander Gaillard, currently in 22nd position overall in his Ligier Honda. The Div 2 standings, of course, being once again part of the prototypes that have the D5, Div 1 and Div 2 classes here on display. Many different classes in order to be able to give everyone the opportunity to race here in the endurance part of GT Cup Series. A phenomenal event that sees so many entries, up to 34 drivers and 34 cars actually ready to fight for the win here at the Red Bull Ring. And as we saw with the communication, thanks to the graphics team, Rupert Atzberger is going to get ready to take the restart as the safety car will pull inside the pit lane at the end of this lap. With less than 48 minutes to go then, it's going to be go time pretty soon as Rupert Atzberger gets ready to start. Jürgen Alsen and Rudolf Benio right behind him. Ares Racing currently leading the GT3 class, whereas Jürgen Alsen leads the 6+8 category, ahead of Gerhard Tveraser and Thomas Verstarp. The Latze with the only Audi R8 GT3 car present here, one of the most iconic cars in the GT3 spectrum. As here you can see the drivers now resuming under green flag conditions. Rupert Atzberger crossing now the start-finish line and gaining already a hefty gap over Jürgen Alsen. Just how quick that KTM crossbow can be on the straights. Absolutely ridiculous straight line speed, as we now see a fight between the two Lamborghinis, which gives Gregor Gigo the chance to make the switchback work on Christian Wimberger, who tried to overtake Ober up the inside, but that didn't work out, and so Gregor Gigo now has a chance up the inside towards turn number 3. Let's see if the BMW driver can make the move stick, or if the Lamborghini will be good enough on the braking. It seems as though Christian Wimberger was very confident on the braking zone into turn 3, which is why he was able to keep the place. And behind them, Dennis Koktopol in the Bretson Racing LMP3. We will talk about them being one of the most successful teams present here, racing of course in LMP3 in many different classes and many different championships, such as the Asian Le Mans Series and the European Le Mans Series. Breton Racing, the Czech team, being of course from Central Eastern Europe, which is the home of the GT Cup Series, which is starting its 2025 journey here at the Red Bull Ring. So far so good for Rupert Atzberger. He's currently in first place, as Jürgen Alsen is holding second position, of course the lead in the 6+8 class, whereas here you can see Scott Topol getting ready to try and make the move stick on Gregor Gigo. Meanwhile, we're going with car number 1 of Marco Fink in the Div 2 standings, right behind Alexander Geyer, the two fighting for the class lead. Whereas here, a first look at one of the GT4 cars, currently being overtaken by one of the KTM crossbows. That was Marius Eigner getting the better of Matthias Lodi. And right behind them, there's also Martin Hudek and Marco Fink. Here we are with car number 93. Roland Ruprechter in the Div 1 standings behind Marius Agner, who just got the move done on Matthias Lodi. And here he is also overtaking Vaclav Janik for Janik Motorsport ACCR Czech team, rocking the beautiful Vantage AMR GT4 Evo. Aston Martin being represented here as well. Just like Lotus with this beautiful Lotus Emira GT4 from Blue Garage Racing. Troy Savitska behind the wheel of car number 144, which we're seeing right now in 31st position. Whereas here, the fight between BMW and Lamborghini keeps on going. A lovely toss-up between two of the most competitive cars in the GT3 standings. And this is what the fight for third place in the overall standings looks like. Rudolf Benio and Gerhard Tverazer, one behind the other. Tverazer flashing his lights to his rival, trying to understand whether or not he can make up a move up the inside or around the outside into turn number 4. That is unfortunately not good enough though to claim third place, and so the BMW stays in front just for now. As you can see with the lovely drone shot, the fight between the two of them, and just in front you could barely see Jürgen Alsen, who is fighting hard to stay in second position. Rupert Atzberger, meanwhile, staying in front with a healthy 4.8 second gap. But most importantly, there's the fight for third place between the two of them. As now you can see the Lamborghini of Gerhard Verazer slowly but surely starting to make up some ground. Let's see if the Lamborghini has the space and has what it takes to launch it up the inside into turn 3. No, it doesn't. Not for now, at least. With the BMW staying in third place. Let's see, because Lamborghini seem to have the pace for now over one lap, though BMW is renowned for its stability and its cornering speed, which is what is helping them keep third place for now on such a fast-flowing track like the Red Bull Ring. Rudolf Benio doing a great job at the wheel of Ares Racing's BMW M4. One of the most recent GT3 cars as well, it has to be said, compared to Lamborghini, who has rocked the Huracan for quite some time. Of course, in 2026, Lamborghini planning to bring the new iterations of their GT3 project, whereas BMW debuted theirs now a couple of years ago in 2023 with the BMW M4, who has proved to be one of the most competitive cars throughout the entire GT3 spectrum. Naturally, this is only the start of this race, with still 40 minutes left on the clock. And here you can see the fight in the GT4 Championship. Buggy Raziem Racing, one of the most anticipated teams coming here, with Martin Hudek behind the wheel of their number 29 car, with Alexander Koshov and Adam Lachko right behind them. The two Mercedes AMG GT4 cars now one behind the other in third and fourth position in GT4 standings, with Alexander Koshov in the Porsche Cayman behind, whereas now here you can see car number 848 going slightly wide. That it's Richard Voschitz in the Porsche 997 Cup, the older generation of the Porsche Cup cars, another category that has stolen the show in the last couple of years, with the 992 Gen 2 and Gen 1, of course, and the 997 being the older model that is still rocked by some of the teams. Kogelbauer Motorsport in this example, with Richard Voschitz behind the wheel, driving that beautiful car just in front of the Lotus Emira GT4, which we had the privilege of seeing a couple of minutes ago. And unfortunately, speaking of the 997, it seemed to have beached itself into the gravel, into turn 4. Let's see if it can manage to restart the car without staying beached in the gravel. That is Richard Voschitz for Kogelbauer Motorsport team, who was in 30th position so far. And we have another spin, this time car number 10. So not an easy start for some of these drivers to the second part of the race, that is, with 38 minutes left on the clock. Meanwhile, in front, Rupert Atzberger has a 6-second gap. As here you can see one of the prototypes managing to get the car going once more. It remains to be seen whether or not Voschitz was able to do that. But the safety car has been once again called out, which is probably a sign that, in fact, the Porsche is still there, beached into the gravel, which is why the safety car has to get out on track once more. And so Atzberger's gap is once again brought down to 0. And here you can see the Porsche stuck in the gravel, car number 848. Unfortunately, Voschitz finishing his race early, which was a real shame for its Porsche 997. Whereas here, we are on board. Lovely to see just how hard the driver has to work on the car, even under safety car conditions. Whereas here you can see the other cars now slowly but surely making their way towards the safety car, with Rupert Atzberger leading the race, Jürgen Alsen in second position, and Rudolf Benio in third place. It has been a strong showing so far for these three. Whereas here you can see the Porsche starting to get recovered. It's a very tough job, the one of the marshals, of course, having to quickly figure out how to get the car unstuck from the gravel and then removing it in the safest way possible. And here we are back on board with one of our cars. It was Victor Mraz in the number 14, the GTX KTM Crossbow, which has to be said is one of the most peculiar concepts of cars present here on the starting grid of the endurance race of GT Cup Series. The Crossbow not only proving to be very quick, but also proving to be a different take on a race car, part of the GT2 category in broader international races, though of course here being part of the more general GTX category. And now we have race control that tells us that the window for the pit stops has been delayed by 5 minutes. And now the pit lane is actually open, and here you can see the first drivers to pull into the pits, and this is Bogi Raziem Racing, car number 55 of Adam Lachko, who was fighting for a GT4 spot on the podium with teammate Martin Hudek. Two different cars, of course. Number 55 for Lachko, number 29 for Hudek. Last few checks, especially on the pressure of the tires, needing to be perfect, especially on such a cold day. It has not been a kind weekend weather-wise here at the Red Bull Ring. Even being on the starting grid, we could feel just a couple of raindrops falling even today. Rain falling, of course, on Friday throughout the afternoon, but no rain so far here on Saturday. As now the cars are getting ready to start once more, as the safety car is in at the end of this lap, and so we can get back to normal racing and look at the gap of Robert Autsberger. KTM Crossbow working overtime to try and gain up some speed, and watch out now for the fight for second, as Jürgen Alsen has not had a great start. So Rudolf Benja and Gerhard Tveraz are trying to make it work. Tveraz are now going round the outside of the first BMW and moving up into third position. Lamborghini now being able to get up into third, whereas now you can see car number 14 of Piotr Vira finishing wide. Whereas here we are once more with one of the GTX cars, Victor Mraz, following Dan Scott the ball really close in. Unfortunately, this is not a good sign for Bogi Raziem Racing. Car number 55 having to pull into the garage with maybe some technical issues for the team. But unfortunately, that is not a good sign for Bogi Raziem Racing. Means that they're out of the opening race of the season. Because now we're on board with the Crossbow, trying to find some space to lap one of the GT4 cars. As you can see, two other cars going slowly, as there's a tire missing from car number 93. That is not what you want to see for R&B research and Welt management for Roland Rupperrechter. The Ligier Nissan car, unfortunately, being very, very slow, as well as one of the Porsches. Maybe this will give us a better explanation of what happened. And unfortunately, it just seems like a failure of one of the bolts and one of the nuts that kept the car and the tires attached to the car. As here you can see once again the fight between Gregor Gigo and Christian Wimberger. Definitely one of the most entertaining fights of the race so far. Gigo overtaking Wimberger and now trying to attack Alexander Ober right in front of him with the other 78 Racing Lamborghini. Gigo part of the GT3 category and now up into second placing class behind Rudolf Benjo with the other BMW, though there's a very big difference between the two of them, as Gigo is rocking the M6, whereas Benjo is driving the M4, the most recent and faster GT3 of the German constructor. As here we are on board with, once again, Piotr Vira and car number 14. Sorry, Victor Mraz in car number 26. Vira is right behind him with the Good Speed Racing Team Mercedes. And unfortunately, this is the portion that we saw before in the gravel, held by the marshals to go back to the pit lane, but unfortunately it seems like they have a bigger issue. Richard Wositz, so far not a good start for his season, as now we can see once again Gregor Gigo closing in on Alexander Ober. He tried the move last time around, couldn't make it work. Unfortunately though, there's a 2-second car time penalty for car number 73 for abusing track limits. That is Václav Janik of Janik Motorsport in the Aston Martin Vantage GT4, currently leader of the GT4 class. However, his gap is 2.1 seconds, so he can still fight for the win, though he has to gain now some time over his main rival Matthias Lodi in the Lemma Racing's Mercedes. So it seems to be an Aston Martin v Mercedes fight for the win in GT4. Car number 63 now also has a warning for track limits. That is Christian Wimberger in that bright orange Lamborghini that we've come to know after his fight, his hard fight with Gregor Gigo throughout the first half of the race. We're in fact now into the second part of it, with 28 minutes and 52 seconds left on the clock. Here you can see that the pit window is now open, and so drivers can now pull into the pit lane to serve their mandatory pit stops for this race. Remember, some of the drivers will hand over the car to their teammates. Some others are instead staying inside the car for the remainder of the race and for the entire 60 minutes of racing. You can see Rupert Atzberger still in the lead with his KTM crossbow. Jürgen Alsen in second position. Gerhard Tverazer now up into third after that lovely restart. Whereas here you can see Miro Konopka, Alexander Ober and Gregor Gigo respectively in the LMP3 prototype from ARC Bratislava, in the Lamborghini of 78 Racing, and in the BMW M6 for Racing Trevor. Three vastly different cars fighting though for a spot on the tarmac. That is the beauty of the Endurance GT Cup Series. As here you can see car number 667 of Alexander Kozhahov, that was 23rd, but most importantly in 4th in the GT4 standings. GT Sports Technology pitting to serve their mandatory stop, change drivers, and then go back out there to try and secure a spot on the class podium. As we can also see Miro Konopka pitting in for ARC Bratislava in this lovely double screen that we can enjoy at this very moment, where the pit lane is definitely busy. And also Victor Mraz pulling into the pit lane, ready to switch off the car and get off to give his teammate the possibility of finishing the race. Here it is, car number 26, Victor Mraz having to pit. It was a good first half of the race for him, fighting hard for a spot in the GTX top 5, currently making the top 5 in 5th position and in 13th place overall, with Rupert Atzberger, the class leader, also leading the entire race. As here you can see a lovely double shot of car number 26, both inside and outside of the cockpit. Into the pits comes the Aston Martin as well, who we saw before has a 2-second time penalty for track limits. And unfortunately those will be quite prominent this weekend, as track limits always are very tough to manage around the Red Bull Ring, that has many opportunities to go into the escape roads made of asphalt and not made of gravel, though the second sector and third sector of the track have different runoff areas. Most notably the second, well, the middle part of the racetrack is full of gravel traps, whereas sectors 1 and 3 have this very modern asphalt runoffs. Not happy, the driver of car number 26, with someone who was crossing the pit lane. Though we are now able to see car number 26 getting off, pressing the pit limiter button, removing it, and now getting ready to go back towards the track. And here it is, the purple car number 26 now ready to try and bring the tires up to temperature once more, as they have to do so quite quickly if they want to at least fight for a spot on the podium, on the class podium, which is what car number 29 is also trying to do. That's Martin Hudek, leader of the GT4 class after the Aston Martin pitted. He was exactly 2 seconds away from his main rival, which is enough so far to take the lead thanks to the Aston Martin's penalty, though of course we have to wait for the next 24 minutes and 17 seconds of racing to understand what is going on. Car number 29 now ultimating its pit stop procedures. Naturally, it's going to be quite tough for them to fight for the win in this race, given the great start that Aston Martin had, though the penalty for the British car has definitely helped Mercedes get back into proceedings here. As here you can see also one of the prototypes continuing. That's Miro Konopka unlapping himself after pitting earlier. Here it is, car number 4. As now almost all of the cars have pitted for their final pit stops. Their one and only stop of the race, of course. And here you can see also the KTM crossbow that was leading the race. Get inside the pit lane, Robert Ratzberger finishing his first stint in lovely fashion. Gerhard Tverazer instead trying to gain up some places. Jürgen Alsen also in the pit lane. Whereas unfortunately Mercedes once again seems to be having issues. And Buggy Raziem Racing, it's not having the season debut that they're waiting for. And unfortunately for them, it seems like their car has yet another issue, whereas the Lamborghini of Gerhard Tverazer is continuing to push hard. Here it is, the dark green Lamborghini up into second position so far, but now having to pull inside the pits to do their one and only pit stop. As here we are on board with one of the KTMs, Jaroslav Honzik, on board with him and car number 26. Of course, Honzik, one of those drivers that have made the switch from sim racing to real racing, and he's really showing that anyone could do that. He's talent not only behind the wheel of his sim rig, but also behind the wheel of this KTM, fighting for a spot on the GTX podium, currently sitting in 5th in category and in 17th position in the overall standings, though immediately being quite quick. Here we are with Gregor Gigo inside the pit lane as well. We were waiting for him to serve his mandatory stop, and that is exactly what he's doing right now. the BMW M6 was one of the last cars yet to pit. With now 20 minutes and 18 seconds left on the clock. Again, Gerhard Tverazer is in the lead, but he has to stop. It's that Lamborghini right there behind the BMW, Tverazer. He is now in the pit lane together with Rudolf Benio and Bob Bau, driver of Trenker Racing, at the wheel of the Porsche 911 Cup car, currently leader of his class. But here he is, Gerhard Tverazer, who was looking good in third position in the overall standings, whereas now we have a winning flag for car number 14, that is Mateusz Lizowski, for that pink and purple Mercedes of Goodspeed Racing Team, currently in 5th position after some of the pit stops, whereas here we are with one of the Mercedes GT4s. GT4 Racing being, of course, one of the entry-level championships for closed cars and covered wheel racing, and the GT Cup Series being, of course, part of that, allowing them to race in this lovely event. Whereas unfortunately, even the M6 seems to have some trouble, and disaster for car number 220 as Gregor Gigo is brought back inside the box, maybe to work on Racing Trevor's BMW. Oh, such a shame. He was in 3rd place in the GT3 standings and fighting for a top 10 in the overall classification, but unfortunately for him and the team, this doesn't look to be possible as of right now, as now the pit window is officially closed. And so we now look at the standings and see once again how things can change really quickly, though Reinhard Koffler, who is now taking over from our pole sitter, is still in the lead, with MZR Motorsport Centrum Reed still in front with the KTM Crossbow GT2 number 814. 2nd place, though, we have the Mercedes of Mateusz Lizowski, Goodspeed Racing Team with their AMG GT3 Evo, seem to have gained quite a lot of time, especially on the other BMW here of Timo Scheibner, whereas here you can see the Vantage AMR of Yannick Motorsport, Jan Matthias, behind the wheel, car number 73. Whereas here we are on board slightly, very quickly, with Jaroslav Honzik, who's still fighting for that GTX top 5, currently in 5th, trying to hold off Marius Eigner, though the gap is 26 seconds between the two of them, as now Yannick Motorsport is under attack from Lema Racing as Miha Primozic moves into the lead of the GT4 standings. Jan Matthias now dropping to 2nd with only 17 minutes left on the clock. Of course, not the outcome that Aston wanted, but the Aston, of course, still being in the fight for the podium. They received a 2-second time penalty some minutes ago for what was a track limit infringement. But lucky for them, they're still in the fight for that top 3. We'll see whether or not they will be able to clinch that at the end of the race, as right now Mercedes seem to be very quick, especially in this part of the race. And here we have a battle of prototype racing. 2 LMP3s, one against the other. It's Arc Bratislava in front of Breton Racing. Miro Konopka inside the first car, the yellow one, and Danis Koktopol right behind him. The two of them fighting for the lead of the D5 standings, though Koktopol received a 30-second time penalty for an incorrect starting position, which was very unfortunate for him. He's still going to try and get a move happen on Miro Konopka, who is one of the most experienced drivers here in GT Cup Series, has raced in the championship for quite a long time, and now he's fighting for that D5 race win. Now going up the inside of a couple of GT4 cars, the Lotus and the Mercedes, who unfortunately wasn't able to let Dan Skoktopol through, as the Breton racing car now is able to do so. The Czech team, of course, being one of the most experienced in LMP3 racing. We were talking about them before, just like AG Bratislava, racing in championships of very high quality, such as the Asian Le Mans Series and the European Le Mans Series, also in the LMP3 category, which is the type of car that they're rocking here, the Ligier, the LMP3, the JS P320. LMP3, of course, receiving a massive upgrade this year for the main championships with the third generation of cars. The GT Cup Series still rocking the now slightly older version, though it was perfectly on par with the regulations just last season. As here you can see Skoktopol maybe trying to make a move. Let's see if he can grab the outside or the inside of Miro Konopka. Eventually he chooses the outside, though. The AG Bratislava driver seems to have found a way to defend the position, though. Watch out for the over and under from Skoktopol, the switchback that sees him now up the inside of Konopka, who, however, seems to have a better straight line speed than his rival, and so Konopka is able to maintain 7th place in the overall standings, but most importantly, the lead of the D5 category. Remember that this is the class that is reserved to prototype racing, and that is right now fighting for 7th place in the overall standings, right in front of Christian Wimberger and that bright orange Lamborghini in the GTX class, currently holding 2nd place in class. Speaking of GTX, Reinhard Koffler is still in the lead of the race. The KTM Crossbow still in front, whereas you could briefly see that the Audi R8 of Thomas Westarp in 6th position, just ahead of Miro Konopka and Dan Skoktopol. The two guys that are now followed by the cameras, who have been fighting for a couple of laps now. Though Skoktopol has not been able to make up any places since he's been in the car after his mandatory pit stop. Konopka would be the first, but he is defending really well. Just 12 minutes and 44 seconds left on the clock in this opening round of the Endurance Series of GT Cup. A calendar that sees 8 different rounds with 1 Endurance and 2 Sprint Series. Tomorrow, on Sunday, we'll be watching the action for the GT Sprint, as well as the trophy race for the prototypes. A calendar that sees, of course, Spielberg hosting round 1 before moving to the Slovakia ring on the weekend of June 8th for round 2. Round 3 is instead going to take place at the Lausitz ring from the 14th to the 15th of June, the week after the one in Orechowa-Poton. After Lausitz ring, we'll be moving to Poznan as the Polish track, the only one in its nation suitable for car racing of this level, will be hosting round 4 on June 29th before going to Most in the Czech Republic from the 26th to the 27th of July. Orechowa-Poton will then be once more at the center of the action for round number 6, the Slovakia ring hosting the third to last race weekend for this series on the 24th of August after a month-long summer break, before having 2 more races in September. The first one in Brno from the 5th to the 7th, and then the second one in Balaton at the very new Balaton Park circuit in Hungary from the 26th to the 28th of October. We're now ready to enter in the final 10 minutes of running here in the endurance race. 10:50 left on the clock as we now see Jaroslav Honzik going towards turn 3 and through turn 3 to manage his car beautifully. It's very difficult to withhold and withstand the power of this KTM Crossbow, but Honzik does such a good job at that. You can see it. He's very smooth on the braking and on the steering. His previous lap time in the previous lap being a 1 minute 32.5, which is good enough to be 7/10 quicker than 6th place in category Marius Aigner. And here you can see him trying to navigate some traffic as well with one of the Mercedes. It's Miha Primozic, the Lema Racing driver, who's leading the pack in GT4 after making the move stick on the Aston Martin of Jan Matthias. We saw that move a couple of laps ago, and now the gap is 4.7 seconds between the two of them. And now the Vantage AMR has to defend from the GT Sport Technology Porsche, with the Cayman of Ivan Pekin being very close by, and here it is thanks to the lovely work of the broadcasting team. That is also now showing the leader of the race, Reinhard Koffler, right behind the two GT4 cars that we were talking about just a couple of seconds ago. The Crossbow still being the quickest car so far. Reinhard Koffler keeping first place. The gap over Timo Scheibner is 21 seconds, though Scheibner only has 3.6 seconds over Mateusz Lizowski. One of the surprises of this race, the Goodspeed Racing Team Mercedes, who was nowhere to be seen in the fight for the overall top 3 in the first half an hour, but now they have risen to the top of the GT3 standings and to 3rd place in the overall category, just in front of Richard Gonda and Arias Racing, the BMW that we saw starting in the top 4, but they are now 16 seconds behind Goodspeed. So it's a very healthy gap for Lizowski at the lead of the GT3 standings. Here is Reinhard Koffler once more, making the best of these last few minutes. He's now trying and getting ready to lap Miha Primozic, doing so into turn 1. You can see just how much quicker the Crossbow is on the straights. Such a fast car on a straight line, but of course, being one of the most tricky to handle in the corners. We saw that with Jaroslav Honzik and his onboard, though he did a phenomenal job the last time we were with him. Koffler now going towards turn number 4, being one of the most consistent drivers out there so far, the only one in the 1 minute 28, a 28 flat for him, which is almost 2 seconds faster than anyone else out on track. The second fastest car in the previous lap was 2nd place Timo Scheibner with a 1 minute 29.8. Whereas right now, unfortunately, car number 119 seems to be stopped. It's Marius Aigner, Koffler's teammate, actually. The other MZR Motorsport Centrum car, unfortunately, seems to be race over for him. He was in 6th place trying to hunt down Jaroslav Honzik, though that didn't work out. And so car number 119 seems to be stopped, unfortunately, just 6.5 minutes left on the clock. And here you can see now Reinhard Koffler maybe slightly worried about seeing the other car from the team having to slow down. Though, of course, it is 2 separate cars, and so their fate not connected. At least one can hope for Richard Koffler. He has been dominating together with his teammate this race. Whereas here you can see Jaroslav Honzik in his car number 26, still working hard behind the wheel to keep that Karen Racing GTX KTM inside the GTX top 5, doing a brilliant job at that. also trying to get back to Alexander Ober in 4th position, though the gap is over 20 seconds, so that will likely not happen if not for an issue for one of the cars. Still on board with Honzig now over the start finish line, crossing the start finish line right now to start yet another lap, lap number 31 to be precise. As now we can see the other angle of car number 26, of course the natural cameras following Jaroslav Honzig around, with now just 4 minutes and 35 seconds left on the clock for this opening race, the endurance part of the GT Cup Series. As we can see now, the clouds have completely covered the sky here at the Red Bull Ring. We were talking about this before, the temperature being very low this weekend, with peaks of 15 degrees, though it's already the middle of May. But of course we know that this region is often known to be quite cold, with the woods keeping a lot of the humidity. So track conditions aren't always easy to manage, as here you can see a two-way fight for second place in the GT4 standings, as Jan Matthias is trying to defend with his Aston Martin from Ivan Pekin in the Porsche from GT Sports. But let me just once again go and take Reinhard Koffler, the leader of the race, who had to complete this very tricky double overtake, of course lapping both cars. As here you can see Koffler doing a great job at handling the situation. Of course his gap is very big. He just needs to handle things throughout the end. He doesn't need to do anything special. Just has to bring the car home, which is what he's doing right now. Going slightly wide into turn 4, but then being able to get once again alongside one of the Porsches. Car number 611. That is Hermann Speck for DB Motorsport. Currently in 12th position. That is one of the Porsche GT3 cars in the 6+8 category, currently into 4th place. However, very far from the podium, currently held by Thomas Westarp, at least 3rd place that is. Westarp also in 6th place in the overall standings, right behind Coach Mackenzie in 5th position for HP Racing International and the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo that started in 4th position this race. Paul Sitter's MZR Motorsport Centrum here, still in the lead of the race. Now starting what is likely the penultimate lap of this opening event of the season, with only 1 minute and 47 seconds on the clock. As now you can see the Praga R1 currently fighting for a spot inside the top 10. However, right now it's down into 16th position, though still holding on to the top 3 in the D5 category. 3rd place for them for now. That's Roman Rubicek, who has stayed behind the wheel of the Praga since minute number 1. Whereas behind him, Jaroslav Honzik has taken over Viktor Mraz in car number 26, who was a lap ahead, and so masterfully Rubicek pulls out of the racing line to be lapped. And so this is Jaroslav Honzik once again having a clear track in front of him. But here we are with the race leader Reinhard Koffler, ready to start the final lap of the race. The whole team has been absolutely impeccable throughout this 60 minutes of racing. It has to be said. Car number 814 was phenomenal throughout this race with now only 25 seconds on the clock, as the KTM Crossbow is starting the final lap. We can also see one of the Porsches right behind. It's still car number 611 of Hermann Speck. As now Koffler handles turn 3 for the last time today. It's been a lovely race for him and for the entire MZR team. Car that was really impossible to approach from anyone else, as they're now going towards turn number 4. Behind them, Timo Scheibner and Mateusz Lizowski currently hold second and third position, with, of course, Scheibner holding the lead in the 6+8 category, and Mateusz Lizowski being part of the GT3 class with Good Speed Racing and that pink and purple Mercedes. With car number 814, which is then declared the winner of race number 1 of the season, the endurance race here at the Red Bull Ring. You can now see Jaroslav Honzik and his on board as well. The checkered flag being waved as we speak. Honzik able to hold on to the GTX top 5 at the end of this race. And so it's a race win for car number 814 and MZR Motorsport Centrum Reed. Ryan Koffler doing an amazing job to keep that first place. And here is the fight for the D5 standings that saw Dan Skoktopol eventually get the lead of its class over Miro Konopka right at the end, which was a phenomenal effort for car number 65 and Breton Racing, who managed to beat ARC Bratislava right at the end for not only 7th place in the overall standings, but also the D5 class. And here are the cars entering Parc Ferme. It's a win for Reinhard Koffler in the number 814 KTM. Of course, not only him, the job was first started by Robert Atzberger, his teammate, who was able to start perfectly this season with a race win. Timo Scheibner finishing in 2nd place in the overall standings, and Mateusz Lizowski in 3rd with car number 14, with BMW and Mercedes then splitting the victories in the 6+8 and the GT3 class respectively. A bit of sun also now peeking through the clouds as you now see the cars getting back towards the pit lane. And here are the highlights of the 60-minute race, the endurance part of GT Cup Series, with car number 814 being able to cross the finish line in first and take home the win. What a lovely day of racing it has been here at the Red Bull Ring. We've enjoyed many different races, many different emotions, especially here in the endurance part of GT Cup Series. It was an amazing showing in the 60 minutes of racing, with Reinhard Koffler taking home the win ahead of Timo Scheibner and Mateusz Lizowski, and of course their respective teammates. the action for GT Cup Series will be back tomorrow on Sunday, May 18th, with the sprint races. Race 1 starting at 9:20 local time in the morning, and then right after the lunch break at 1:20 p.m. local time, race number 2 will declare the final winners of this opening weekend of the season. Of course, the Red Bull Ring being home to the first of the 8 rounds of the 2025 championship after the rebrand of the series into the name GT Cup Series that has brought many different drivers and, of course, many different teams on the starting grid. We've seen 34 entries for this opening round, and of course, between GT3s, GTX, and prototypes, and let's not also forget the GT4 class and the GT Cup, we've had so much fun throughout this fast 60 minutes. As we come to a close in this opening weekend of the season, for the endurance part at least, we crown our winners, Reinhard Koffler, and of course let's not forget his teammate Rupert Atzberger, for what is the win here in the endurance race of GT Cup Series.